Hello, my name is John Goodwin. My friends call me Gumby. Please call me Gumby. Welcome to the Teen Metal Archives. This is a collection of art, video, music, pictures, and various events portraying the lives and good times of Nick Menza, Darwin Ballard, and myself, John Gumby Goodwin. I was born in the San Francisco Bay Area, Redwood City, but my family moved to Sacramento when I was pretty young, so I mostly grew up there. What little growing up I did do. My father was a classically trained musician. He played piano, but his thing was conducting and arranging. And so I guess I got the musical gene. But my mom was also an artist. She was a ballerina and studied dance for many years, and then switched over to having babies. Anyway, so I have 5 siblings, 1 brother and 4 sisters. Love them all. And it was a very musical family. We always played music together. And we still do.
It was in the Rice Clinic in Munich, Germany, and I didn't speak any German. I was there all by myself, and he came out fine. In this house where we live now, and where Nick lived too, we have a basement, almost a full basement, and he had his drums down there, and I went to work. He would start practicing, and when it was time to come home from work, I would call him, tell him he was done. He practiced all day long.
Every day around here was always music. Never stopped.
And musicians. They were the kids would come, the guys would come in with basses and guitars
and amps.
And they would jam all day long.
Yeah. I'm 4 years younger than Nick, so for me, it was great to have all my brother's friends come over, and then, you know, like Nick would always buy me records for whatever he wanted to listen to. I didn't know any of these bands. I mean, he turned me on to Rush and Led Zeppelin and Ozzy. He turned me on to all those bands. I mean, and so getting that music from him, you know, as a gift from him so that he could learn the songs, and then he'd be downstairs playing it, and I'd be like, oh my God, I know that song. That's on my record that he got me, you know? And I'd get so excited about it, and then I'd want to go and sit on the steps and listen to you guys play. And most of Nick's friends would let me come down and hang out, and Nick would be like, get out of here, Mom, get her out of here. And everybody's like, just leave her, she's fine.
I actually met Darwin when we were pretty young. We were playing baseball in the local organized baseball leagues, and he was on the other team. And when he would come up to bat, since I was the catcher, I'd razz him a little bit and distract him and try to get him off his swing. But that guy was an incredible hitter, and he loved to hit a high pitch. In fact, we politically incorrect called him the tomahawk, because he had this overhand swing. He would chop at the ball or get a single every time. So I saw Darwin at school. Hey man, how you doing? All that. I didn't know he was a musician until one night I went to a party, and here he is playing bass in a 3-piece, and they're playing Hendrix tunes, and I'm like, cool. And when they took a break, I pulled him aside and said, hey, I got this drummer. You want to get together and have a jam? And he said, sure. So I had a friend named Mark McCutcheon who lived in my neighborhood, and I knew he played drums pretty well. And I said, hey, you want to jam with this guy? They were playing some Hendrix stuff. It sounds really good. He said, sure. So Mark and Dar and I hit it off right away. We started writing songs. and it was going pretty good. The guys were pretty creative, and they weren't afraid of trying new material, and we just started on this quest of writing, and it was really productive. We started playing gigs everywhere, and we had a great time and everything, but again, it was nagging. We had to move. Darwin, Mark, and I were jamming all the time until Darwin moved to UC Davis to go to school. But that was cool. We would go and we would set up in the lobby of their dormitory and jam all night. It was great fun. The time finally came and we knew we had to move. And Darwin even dropped out of school. But kind of right in the planning stages of it, our drummer's girlfriend got pregnant. And the right thing to do was for him to stay here and take care of family business. So that's what we decided. Mark had already introduced us to Kevin Williams, though, and he had taken over doing all the band management and chores for the band. He set up the gear. He made sure everything was running right. At this point, we had made good enough friends with Kevin. He said, "Hey, if you guys go down there, I want to go." I said, "Really? That'd be awesome, man. Let's go."
And I had an El Camino, so I had a pickup bed, so I could haul gear around. So I became a roadie, and that's literally how I learned to do what I do today. And I've made a living for over 40 years by going to Gumby's house to watch them practice, and we just became friends. We moved to LA together. We lived in several different places together. The hopes and dreams weren't fantasy. Like, we just went down there because we thought, well, why not?
So we got our plan into high gear, and the only problem was we really didn't have a good connection down there. So Kevin and I and Mark were all working at the same place, and this guy came in, and he said his brother down in Los Angeles knew a singer who was looking for a band, and he gave me his brother's number. Well, that guy was Bobby Michna, lifelong friend of mine and lifelong friend to all of our bands. And I called Bob, and we hit it off right away, and we're joking and laughing and telling stories. Next thing I know, he says, "Well, I'm going to have to go run Joey down." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I called him back in a couple of days. He goes, "Nah, I still haven't found him." And finally, Bobby gets a hold of Joey. And Joey says, "Hey, Bobby, I play saxophone. I play Latin music. Yeah, I sing, but I don't think I'm what these guys are looking for. They want a rocker." And Bob goes, yeah, I guess you're right. So Bob calls me back and goes, "Hey, I don't think Joey's going to work for you guys. But hey, you know what you should do? You guys should just come down here and take a visit. You can hang on my place. Come and see what Los Angeles is all about. Look around." So you know what? We started doing that. And again, we were just bound to be friends with Bobby. He was just our friend from the beginning. We just hit it off. We were into the same music. We liked to do the same stuff. He goes, "You know what? I believe in you guys. I've heard your recordings. I see you as people. You could come down here and hang on my pad here in North Hollywood. And I know it's just going to be for a short time. And then you can find your own place when you get jobs and all that kind of stuff." We said, "Great." So we put it all in motion. We packed it up and headed down.
Every day was just so exciting. We had a lot of fun, and we were just tripping around, planning the future.
It was pretty awesome, actually. Like Gazzari's and the Starwood and the Troubadour and all that shit was for real. There was awesome bands playing. It was a scene. It wasn't like it is now. It was really actually cool. We went to a lot of shows. We hung out with a lot of local bands. It was a really, really good time if you were going to be in LA. It was actually even affordable. We were young. We were 18 years old. We were just having fun.
I believe Gumby was only playing guitar for just a couple of years when we met him. He says, "Wow, these guys are good. Let's see what we can do."
When I first met John and saw him play at such a young age, I seriously was blown away that somebody that young, without any of the life experiences or doing shit tons of gigs, what I've learned now even now I learned, but back then I used to tell him all the time, dude, you're by far my favorite guitar player. I could listen to you play. Like, he had such a grasp on rock. He just had a grasp on it. He just got it. And then he had his Flying V, you know, which was cool as shit. So I just think he comes up with licks and hooks, and he just has such a grasp on music. Like, he just absorbs it. Like, I don't even know. I think that's, some people have it. Like, some people are like gifted basketball players or soccer players. He was just a gifted guitar player. But by far, when I first met him, and I really didn't know shit, you know, I mean, I'd seen a few concerts in my life, but I think to literally see somebody play guitar like that in person, I thought it was awesome. We always shared a home together. Peg, John's girlfriend at the time, and myself and Darwin pretty much went everywhere that we moved. We kind of moved together. And John and Peg and I were pretty inseparable for a while there. And Darwin was right with us. We had some wonderful experiences. We lived in some pretty cool houses in some crazy situations.
We found this house just above Lakeview Terrace. But it was a pretty big house, and we could all live there, and it turns out we could rehearse there. I played a gig at Santa Monica College in their amphitheater, and we're setting up for the gig. I sound checked my guitar, and I was just about ready to leave the stage, and I heard the drums fire up, and all of a sudden I hear this John Bonham thunder coming out of the drum set, and I go, "What?"
It was an Emerald gig, and it was big. That was like the first time that I thought, okay, you know, I'm going in the right direction. And, you know, so we got this whole thing, and I'm like trying to keep a beat, and, you know, doom, 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 being a fucking, you know, an octopus on the kit. And Nick's like, dude, let me do it. And go ahead. You know, he just comes down and starts laying these, like, you know, sick, heavy, I mean, just fucking hardcore, heavy. And Darwin kind of looks up at Gumby and kind of goes, dude, you know, and Darwin didn't say anything. He was like, dude, he had 4 words: love you, brother, load a bowl, let's carve, you know. I can tell you right now, you know, hearing a sound check at an Emerald gig when Nick was a young kid, this guy's going to be the fucking guy. I mean, we all knew it. I mean, look, growing up with the guy, everybody knew he was a prodigy. I mean, Nick didn't really look like a rocker. He's kind of like, you know, shoulder, big glasses. He just kind of blended the fuck in. But as soon as he'd take his glasses off and rip his shirt off, you know, and start playing drums, I mean, everybody else was in fucking second place. Yeah, those were good days.
And I turned around, and this blonde-haired guy's walking toward me, and I said, "Who are you?" And he goes, "I'm Robbie Schaefer. I'm one of the drum roadies." And I said, "Well, who's playing the drums?" And he goes, "Oh, that's Nick Menza. He's the other roadie." And I said, "No, he's not. He's our new drummer." And I just blurted that out, but that's a true story. And Rob looked at me all shocked, like, okay, dude. But sure enough, within weeks, Nick was our new drummer. I heard that guy play, and that was it. This guy had the sound, and he had this strange power and energy and charisma that couldn't be denied. So after that, Robbie and Nick and some of the other guys came up, and they saw our very last gig with that instrumental band at one of our house parties up in the canyon.
How I met Nick Menza was probably the time he was a roadie for Steve Klong, and
But
Nick asked, he goes, "Dude, you think I can jump in there?" And we're going, "Well, I don't know. You're gonna have to ask Gumby, man."
And during one of our breaks, Nick started talking to me, kind of asking me about jamming, and I said, "Well, okay, that sounds great. How old are you, man?" He goes, "Well, I'm 16 now, but I'm just about to turn 17. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to be a senior next year." And I go, "Oh, geez, this guy's still in high school. But you play like so powerful." And he goes, well, he started explaining to me that his dad was a professional musician, and, you know, he's been around music all of his life. And, you know, okay, I started to get it. All right. So, yeah, dude, come over jam sometime and we'll see what's up. And someone took a picture of us the first time we jammed together. And we spent the next 10 years in so many different bands with so many different singers and so many different lineups around that core of me, Darwin, and Nick.
Really, the person that taught Nick how to play drums was Darwin, because he had to follow Darwin's bass lines, and Darwin had to really help him to become cohesive, just like he helped me. I was exactly the same way. When I started jamming with Darwin, I had lots of riffs, but as far as composing it and arranging it into a song, you know, I was totally new. And Darwin taught me how to do that, just like he taught Nick how to play in the framework of a song. Like I said, the first time I saw him play with you guys was a party, and he couldn't even make it all the way through a song. But there were parts of that song where he was like sounding like Neil Peart or something. So you could tell that the guy was going to get it together. And I know he even told me that, you know, Darwin's one of the main reasons. I feel the same way as far as a guitar player. You know, Darwin was my songwriting partner, and he really helped my playing. The guy, there was just something special about Darwin's ear. I've never met anybody in my life that could literally get up with any musicians in any situation. I don't care. They could be a country band. And Darwin could get up and play with them. And he's one of the only musicians that I've ever met like that. When it came to anything sports or politics, nobody on the planet had more knowledge than Darwin. He was like a walking encyclopedia. And the guy was like a computer. He would make lists and write all this stuff down. So his mind was like a trap. And it makes sense that he was such a great musician, because it was the same thing with music. Every note and everything that he ever played or heard stayed in there. He made sure it did.
Hell of a bass player. You know, he played with a pick. I remember, John, when I first moved out here, he's like, you should play with a pick. And I was like, man, all the greatest bass players would play with their fingers. None of the great bass players with pick. But Dar played with a pick and thumb. I looked at that and I realized that, you know, why not do both?
He's a very intelligent man. Eccentric, but in a good, positive way. A really nice guy, you know. Very mellow. I mean, he was a very quiet and somewhat, I guess, shy, but he would always ask me about, you know, do you have extra picks? I go, yeah, I got a bunch over here. Because sometimes when he played the bass, there would be a time where he had to play with a pick. Because some of the riffs were pretty damn fast. So he would, you know, nudge me or tap me on the shoulder or just come over and talk to me. Hey, you got that pick? I go, yeah, here.
Nick, Gumby, myself, Chris Grady, Dar, of course. They had the entire crew. Well, Y&T just came out with Black Tiger, you know, and it was huge. That was it. That just sewed our ass together. We went and saw them at Chuck Landis's Country Club on Reseda and Sherman Way. Everybody went inside. We all had tickets. We were doing a little bit of pre-funk tailgate kind of stuff. So it was just left with me and Darwin. And ironically, the sound guy was Neil Schaefer, and he was a friend of ours. It did sound for everybody. I mean, he was, you know, he's just an incredible sound mixer. We walk in a couple minutes late, and everybody's just floor to floor, ceiling to ceiling, and it was me and Dar, and we walk up, you know, and we see Neil Schaefer. There's nowhere to sit. There's nowhere to stand. And Neil goes, hey, shh, Robbie, come here. And says, stand right here. And so we're standing in the sound pit. And they opened up with Black Tiger. And 30 seconds into it, I look over on Darwin. I look down, and he'd passed out. And so, I mean, like, you know, reaction happened. I leaned down, and, you know, Darwin was a really fit guy. I picked him up, and I ran him outside. And, you know, he kind of came to, we drank water, we did the whole thing, and was like, you know, what happened? You know, I'm like, dude, you all right? He's like, dude, he goes, how was the show? And I was like, it's the second song. He's like, well, let's get back in. And they wouldn't let us back in. So we sat outside on the curb, Darwin and I, at the YNT show, pre-cell phone days, by the way, and listened to it. And he's like, hey, man, sorry, bro. Sorry, man. You know? And yeah, and he's just like, well, let's go smoke a bowl and take a walk around the block. And that was it. And that was like one of the best nights I've ever had in my life. And we just sat up against the side of the building and just had this incredible chat about like life, love, rock. That was a Darwin story, so, you know.
We tried a few guys out, and then we found this guy named Dave Miles. And this guy was super creative, had a lot of energy. He could sing real loud and real clean. And most of all, he wanted to write songs. And he and I just went on a tear and wrote a bunch of songs. Our first gig with Dave Miles was actually at Nick's high school talent show. And we set our gear up, and we blew the doors out of that place. Dave was running all over the stage. There was a grand piano with its lid closed right off the stage, and he jumps on top of it and starts dancing around.
And I was just getting into it, you know, and we were jamming. And there was a grand piano that was even with the stage, like a big piano, right? Even with the stage. And I didn't even really think about it. And I'm just pounding away, and I walked out, and I'm just like pounding on this piano while I'm singing. And the teacher's just freaking out, because I was like pounding my feet on it and jumping around on this piano. And it was just, you know, so I think I got him in a little bit of trouble. I'm not sure.
So we're doing gigs and starting to get it going. And I'll never forget this one early gig we did. And it was a new Scientology center. And we didn't even know what Scientology was. They said, we're just having bands come out here and play. And it was great. We got to crank it up on Hollywood Boulevard, and no one said a word about the volume or what we were playing or anything.
One time in particular, we played this like a festival almost type thing in Hollywood. They closed down Hollywood Boulevard, and we were set up on this huge stage in front of the Scientology building. But there was all these people there, and it was amazing. We had gotten a pretty big following, and there was people climbing the lampposts. It was the oddest thing, standing there singing, going, wow, these people are crazy.
Then we started to do some recording, and when we were listening back, we were realizing the styles weren't completely meshing. Although Dave was an awesome singer, we wanted something more raw. But keep in mind, the heavy metal scene wasn't fully formed yet, and the term heavy metal was certainly around. Judas Priest and Black Sabbath were certainly around, but it wasn't a big wave like it became. So we partied with Dave, and everything was cool. I still talk to him all the time. He's got an awesome studio at his house, and he's still singing. I first heard of Goodman music when I saw it in a local music paper ad. And I thought, well, all right, this guy must be pretty cool. He has this rock band, and they're doing ads with him. Let me go see what that's about. So I went down there hoping to get a job. But when I went in there, he didn't really have very much guitar stuff. And it was all keyboards, pianos, organs, synthesizers. Anyway, he comes up to me and I said, hey, what's going on? I'm looking for a job. He says, yeah, can you sell? I go, oh, yeah, I can sell. He had a couple of ratty guitars on the wall, and he points to this red guitar and he goes, if I had this guitar in blue, would you buy it today? And I said, well, I'm not here to buy a guitar. I'm trying to get a job. And he goes, exactly. He was trying to say, engage the customer, find out what their real story is. Do they really want to buy a guitar? Or are they just kicking tires? Anyway, Joe hired me. He gave me a chance. And I listened to him. The guy was a master salesman. Anyway, Joe would do these special buys and use it as a loss leader and almost give it away just to get people in the store. And of course that works. That's the oldest one in the book. So the store started getting popular. Remember, this is the 80s, and synthesizers were just blowing up.
one of the things that was interesting about it, we were in the center of the music industry. We were in the center physically and in every other way. And I specialized in keyboards and synthesizers and electronic musical instruments when nobody else was. They would come to the store. They said, I was a Guitar Center, but the keyboard guy was sick that day, so I couldn't get any help. And we had, everybody was a keyboard and synthesizer and electronic drum machine and hard disk recording at some point. So that became not only the band room and the place where everybody hung out who was a musician or a young musician, but we specialized in professionals and high-end pro. So anybody who was doing recording, especially when they wanted to use a synthesizer or high-end stuff, was there all the time, including, this is what I would have to think about this, but including the guys from Motley Crue and all the composers and Elmer Bernstein and Jerry Goldsmith and all the big bands. I mean, it was not unusual to have Paul McCartney in one room trying out something, and certainly the Jacksons were there all the time, Michael Jackson. Everybody who was anybody in the music business was at the store. And also I sort of managed to specialize and round up the first of every new electronic device. So a lot of people came there because I was the only one on the West Coast that had something, whether it be the new Roland or the Emulator 2 or the, thinking back, the first Lynn drum machine in a music store. And we sort of didn't give it that much thought at the time because we would watch the Grammys or the Oscars and our customers were always the ones there. And it was often the song that they started by getting gear from us.
And everybody would just start coming and hanging out there. Joe was super cool. He let me bring my dog, Sunshine, down. And every day, Sunshine would get out of the car with me, trot into the store. And she was cool with everybody, except the UPS guy. It was the brown uniform. I don't know what it was. She did not like that guy. And he learned not to just come in the door, but she would growl at him every time. Otherwise, everybody loved Sunshine. Customers would pet her as they come in. Kids, if they were there, would play with her, etc. Well, the son got so comfortable there that I started noticing every day around 3 o'clock, she'd want to go out. Well, that's fine. I took her out. And then she would trot down the sidewalk, and I didn't think too much about it. She was completely trustworthy. She certainly wasn't going to run away. And then one day I decided to follow her and see, where are you going? Every day I take you out around 3, and then you end up going down the sidewalk. So I follow her, and she goes into the next business, which is a Goodwill store. And inside, there's this old black cat named Charles. And I saw Charles every day. Hey, Charles, how you doing? But he never told me what he was doing. Every day at 3 o'clock, she'd trot down there, and he had a box of milk bones down there. And every day she got a milk bone. It's super cool, man. Thank you. I love Charles. So did Sunshine. Anyway, Goodman Music was a total hangout place. And it got pretty wild and woolly in there. It was a giant department store. And there was 2 staircases, kind of like an old Sears department store, and, or a Woolworths or something. And there was a downstairs and upstairs. Well, nobody went downstairs. It was closed off to the customers. And Joe let my band rehearse in one of the giant rooms down there. It was like a nightclub in there. And we had all kinds of gear. If we need anything, we just went upstairs to the music store and brought it down to the rehearsal room. Again, Joe was cool with that. It wasn't like I was getting rich in the music store. I basically ended up running the front counter and kind of approving all sales deals. And Joe trusted me, and that was cool. But one thing he did do, which wasn't really good, was he gave me the key, and I was supposed to open the store every day. And, I have my good qualities, but being exactly on time, not one of them. And I kind of pleaded with Joe, man, don't make me do that. He goes, oh, come on, man, you guys rehearse here. You're going to come and go and lock it up, and you're the only one I trust. And I said, all right. So for a long time, I was pretty good, 10:05, 10:10. But it started drifting. So one day we're having a sales meeting. And the closest place to have a sales meeting was Lau's Kitchen, who also served breakfast. Pancakes from a Chinese restaurant was funky, man. I didn't eat there. Anyway, we're sitting there having a meeting, and Joe's getting kind of steamed. He goes, every day I come in, 10:10, 10:15, Nobody's ready. The store's not ready to go. Sometimes the door isn't even unlocked, and I have to unlock and open the store. John, what's going on? And everybody's really quiet and, kind of murmuring. Nobody has anything to say. Everybody's late every day. I said, well, so Joe, you say like every day, like 10, 15, you're getting there and nothing's ready? He goes, yes, almost every day. I said, well, why don't you come in around 10:20, 10:25? That ought to do it. And I said it deadpan. And everybody looked at me like, man, you did not say that. I did. And then Joe started cracking up. It was funny. The whole thing was absurd. And he finished his breakfast and realized we were incorrigible. We'd get there when we damn well wanted to. And he was lucky to have us. Just kidding, Joe. He was lucky we showed up every day, honestly, really. Everybody in there was a musician. Everybody had a different band and a different bag and was into something else. But we did. We showed up every day because we liked being there. The atmosphere was so conducive to music. It was pretty cool. Even though the store was really old, there was something that had a lot of character about it. Even the middle room of the building, the ceiling was all caved in, and you could see this. You could see sky, and that was a real meeting room for everybody because we could go in there and smoke pot, and we'd go up out through the ceiling. I remember a couple of Saturdays where our manager, Pat Cardoni, who we called Uncle Skippy, would open up the till and go score an 8-ball a blow and get all the salesmen running. And the sales just went, woo! That's probably not a sustainable long-term arrangement, but it worked a couple times for sure. I saw it. Anyway, mostly it was like a contact center too. Everybody would come and go, and your band members would meet you there, and you'd go to your gig or your rehearsal, what have you. Since we rehearsed there, we would come and go to gigs from there. So often we would go do a gig, and then our crew would come back, load down all our gear into the basement again, and that was that.
Goodwin Music was a big place. From back in the old days, made out of solid concrete. And it was huge. And it was just riddled in cracks and little rooms and behind the scenes. But on the bottom of this absolute concrete underbelly was the rehearsal room. And it was big. And you can't get that now. I mean, they just don't even make that shit. It was like a vault. And you can never have that again. It was like playing in a fucking New York City subway after the apocalypse. I that was the epicenter of what everybody did. It's where everybody went. All of our guys, all of our friends worked there. Goodman Music was the mecca. Absolute rock, debauchery, prank central, and was also a place of business. But we knew how to balance that, I think.
So things were pretty comfy around there, and we'd goof off some days. And I remember when you walk in the front door, to your right was a counter where the cash register was, and that's where I sat and did the deals. And to the left was the big showroom. Well, there was a wall behind the cash register, and there was a bunch of inventory back there, all stacked up. Anyway, we were goofing around back there with a roll of paper and a tape ball and playing a little baseball back there, and nobody was watching the cash register. All of a sudden, I hear Joe call me, "Hey, John." And I'm like, damn, did you hear him come in? I didn't know he was here. And I go, "Yeah, Joe." And he goes, "Hey, can you bring me change for 20? So I went to the register and I popped it open. No cash. And I go, I knew what was up. I said, "Hey, Joe, I guess you got the cash." He goes, "Yeah, I guess I do. Or do I? Maybe a customer has it, John." Anyway, lesson learned. That straightened out. And I noticed I still had the tape ball in my hand. Well, we were unloading some boxes and doing some wrapping, and I started making a bigger and bigger tape ball. Not even thinking about it. And then one of my friends walked by, and I tossed it at him. He said, "Hey." I said, "You're it." And I ducked out behind the counter. Little did I know, he came pursuing me right away. And he threw it at me and hit me in the head from about 10 feet. I said, "Hey, man." He goes, "Hey, you're it." And then somebody else saw it, and all of a sudden there's a game of ball tag with this giant tape ball. And it gets really out of control really fast, and I'm like, wow. Reversion to elementary school, like instantly. Anyway, for some reason, this went on for the rest of the afternoon. And it was kind of casual because there were still customers in there. But we were basically firing the ball at people, and they became it. And you had to hit somebody else, and everybody's like ducking and everything. But here's the trick. There's expensive musical instruments everywhere. So you couldn't just chuck the thing, not to mention customers. It was like what became complex video games with all this stuff going on. Anyway, Joe left, never caught on to what we were doing. And it gets dark. Last customer leaves, lock the door. Everybody's going through all the motions to close the store. Well, the goddamn game is still going on, man. And then it starts heating up. And then somebody goes and turns out the lights. And he screams something to the effect of, "It's on!" And everybody scatters like mice. And the tape ball's sitting there. And I grab it. And I go on a hunt. Well, it's not hard to find somebody. And they were ducking behind instruments or hiding behind a piano or whatever it was. We found somebody and blasted them and ran. They could throw it right back and get you. That's just the way it is.
Here's a bunch of grown men, legally, running around a dark store, running around pianos and guitars, throwing wads of tape and just beating your friends. It just made no sense, but at the time it made perfect sense. And I can't even fathom, the collateral damage, what would happen if somebody A, got hurt, or actually we did fuck up Joe's. Sorry, Joe. I love you, brother. Fuck up one of his big pianos or one of his vintage guitars, but it was just an absolute shit show,
So this goes on for almost 2 hours. Completely dark store, not one light on. People are running and stuff here. Oh, damn it. And then someone would throw the tape ball and it would hit a guitar and you'd hear a spang. Long story short, we finally shut it down, but the next day, it was like a buzz. And people were waiting for Joe to leave so we could lock the door and start the game. So the game hits a fever pitch, and I believe it was Pat or Jeff Shump that ran into a piano pretty hard and injured their leg. They were out. And we all stopped for a minute and we're like huffing and puffing like kids on a playground. We thought, oh, wow, okay. Maybe 4 or 5 games, like I said, but we saw, man, this is too dangerous, and it's amazing we haven't broken one of the instruments or something anyway.
Well, I spent a lot of time at Goodman Music with Gumby and Nick. And at first, I think it was really watching Gumby play in his band. But then Nick joined the band pretty quickly, and that was definitely a den of activity and joy and fun and just some righteous metal going on, you know.
We'd go down to Goodman Music, and I hung out there after hours a lot, and I was like so honored to be out there. I was the cool sister at that point, and then all my friends started traipsing along, and then he would always be asking me, where are your friends? Where are all your friends at? I'm like, they're coming.
Well, we're going.
I loved going to like the Troubadour and the Country Club and everything, and I looked forward to his solo. That was the highlight of my night, was watching him do a solo.
Goodman Music, and I remember it was like a basement, and it was always after hours. You guys had set up, and yeah, it was great. It was, I don't know if there was ever like a set cutoff time that you would stop playing, but there was always a really cool vibe and the energy and the fun and all the great stuff that came along with that. So as far as hitting the drum extra hard, I think that he knew a way to make it sound big and heavy by just his personality putting it into it, man. And you know, I like technique or something like that. I don't know. I wish I could give you more on that, but I think he played like his personality, and that was fast and furious and just aggressive. You know, he didn't hold back when he wanted to play, man. He let it go, and that was Nick.
I don't know how Gumby got the job at Goodman Music, but when he did, it like opened up a whole new world for us as musicians or whatever, you know, just being down there in the music scene. And Goodman Music was a pretty popular place. And Joe is and was a super awesome human, like really nice. And he just gave Gumby the keys to the store and said, you can have the basement and the corner. So we were like, holy shit. So we got a music store upstairs. Now, come on, be real. We're 20 years old, 21 maybe, and we have a music store upstairs with anything that you want, and we have the basement, and we have a studio down there. Like, we have a PA set up, we rehearse down there, we hang out down there, and we have fucking keys so we can get in and do what we want. So that was just absolutely brilliant that we had that opportunity, and I think it was really a positive thing, and we didn't take advantage of it. We didn't do stupid shit. We didn't steal anything. We didn't break anything. We didn't have stupid parties. We were actually fairly responsible. But yeah, good times at Goodman Music, and because of that, had I not been a backline tech, I would have never worked my way into audio, which is what I really wanted, and none of that would have happened had I not met Gumby.
Joe was super cool, all of us, and he welcomed everybody, no matter who you were, and they felt that. From rock stars and celebrities down to the lowliest street character, everybody got respected in that store, and that's just the way it was. And therefore, everybody felt safe, and everybody shared ideas, talked freely. We talked about politics, we talked about everything, and it was all good. It was really a cool scene. I remember the store started doing better, and Joe was able to get us all medical insurance, which was a big deal for musicians. Wow, Joe, I mean, we could go to a doctor? He said, yeah, John, you could go to a doctor. And I go, do you think they could help me? And he goes, no, but you can go to a doctor.
Nick was a great guy, a fantastic drummer, an interesting person, very creative, very intelligent. He would tell me ideas for movies and stories and books and art, all very shockingly, amazingly well thought out, complete, very original, very innovative. Now, as an employee, there was a period of time where I gave Nick a job because I liked him and he needed a job, but I was never completely sure what Nick did at the store. And it didn't matter. I mean, it was a big store. We had a lot of people.
I remember Nick worked at Goodman for a while, and he was really good for doing stuff like setting up instruments in a creative way and making little displays and such. But otherwise, he was just hanging out. One day, Joe walks up to me and he says, does Nick work here? And I go, yeah, sometimes. He goes, do I pay him? And I say, yeah, I think you do pay him. A lot? I go, no, I don't think you pay him a lot. He goes, oh, okay. Well, it certainly was an end of an era when Goodman Music shut down. But I want to say thank you, Joe Goodman. Not only did you help me, but you helped all my friends and so many people. We're all very grateful, truly. You're the man. Thank you. We went on a hunt. We needed a new singer, someone with some serious performance skills, almost more than singing skills. Well, bingo. Bobby strikes again. He said, hey, Gumby, I was at a party the other night with this guy, and he says he knows Kelly Rhodes, the brother of Randy Rhodes, and he's looking for a band. He's a singer.
Kelly Rhodes was the brother of the great Randy Rhodes. Kelly his mind was totally into what he was doing. He was like the front man. He dressed like the front man. He dressed like the king, and he went out there and did the best he could.
We set up a jam with Kelly, and it went pretty good. The three of us could see that Kelly wasn't really in our wheelhouse as far as what we wanted to do stylistically, which was more Led Zeppelin, Rush, Judas Priest, kind of progressive metal. And Kelly was definitely more of an Aerosmith kind of a guy, you know, real bluesy, and he could do that stuff real good. So we ended up kind of compromising in the middle, and I'm not sure what that sound was, but that was called Rhodes. One time with Rhodes, we were headlining, but we wanted to leave all of our stuff set up and sound checked. And they were giving us a hard time. They were saying, no, you got to take all your stuff down. Well, we were making a fuss about it, and Doug Weston, the owner of the club, came out. He says, what's going on? Kelly yelled back, Doug, we want to leave our gear up on stage. It's all set up. We don't want to move it again till we play. And Doug goes, let them do whatever they want. Oh, my God. The club staff hated us. But we were so smug that Doug Weston had approved us leaving our gear up.
The first Troubadour shows we did were sellouts. There were people around the block. And I can remember talking to Nick before one of the shows. And I just remember his exuberance and how pumped he was. He was great at like building your spirits up. He was just the eternal optimist. Always, always with that big Nick Menza grin.
And he saw the numbers we were bringing into that club. And about a month later, we played 2 nights in a row, a Thursday and a Friday. And that was kind of unheard of, and we sold out both nights. Various record companies courted us, and the deals weren't very good, and they basically were just demos with them having all the options on us, but yet being able to tie us up. So we were a little frustrated. And then a friend of the Menza family named Freddie Sesher stepped forward and said, hey, I'll produce the record. And even though Freddie didn't really have any experience, he said he had the money. And he said, whatever you guys want to do, I'll take you into the studio and let's just do it. And well, that sounded pretty good to us. I had some friends over at Sound City, and they said, you'll have to come in the off hours and work around other people's schedule. And we said, well, okay, how much does it cost? And they said, well, it's $150 an hour for you guys because you're our friends. And $150 in 1985 is a lot of money, kids. And so we went back to Freddie and we said, well, this is how much it's going to cost. And he said, okay, let's do it. Well, lo and behold, Freddie came up with some money, gave him a deposit, and it turns out the last band before us was Ronnie James Dio doing Holy Diver. And we were psyched. Man, we loved that record. And I said, hey, where did Vivian Campbell set up his guitar rig? And they showed me, and I said, I want to put my stuff there too, okay? They said, sure, dude. And Nick set up in that big room, those big green pearls he had, and those drums sounded like thunder in that place. It was like a high school auditorium in there. And me and Darwin were flanking him with some baffles in between us, and we tracked that whole album live.
First off, I can start by the nervous, the anxiety, the anticipation was like, dude, we're going to Sound City. We're going to Chris Minto, was it Michael Wagner, I think it was. Just walking into the room and knowing that this is it. I mean, this is the shit. This is it. I mean, you know, and I was a young kid, and I guess we were all kind of young, but, you know, going there and being in the room where all of the goods were recorded. The drum room, you know, that's all the good drum sounds. And, you know, and after a couple of days there, we were kind of looking at it and kind of going, you know, this is a great place, but it's kind of a piece of shit. It kind of needs a makeover. I get it now. And I got it then after a couple of days, but that was a big deal, Sound City. You know, when you're a young kid and you think that you know, your band is about on the edge, Sound City was probably what gave everybody the confidence and the motivation to say, okay, we're legit. We're official. That was a magic time. I mean, that was a magic place.
I gotta say, Steve Ely, he played the most beautiful acoustic guitar parts on that album, as well as some really solid rhythm. Steve was so dependable all the time, and he was definitely part of Team Metal. And Steve played with Rhodes, but he later went on to play with us in the Green too. We love Steve. Tracking at Sound City was a dream come true. The biggest, fattest sounding equipment in the world, probably literally. Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters actually bought all of the equipment from Sound City and has it at his home studio now. Shrewd fellow. Sound City was inspirational. When you would walk in, there were so many gold and platinum records on the walls from any artist you could think of. We were just finishing the Rhodes album, and there was a band that was already scheduled to come in, and we weren't done. Well, they took a visit to the studio, and they popped their head into the studio. It turns out it was Saxon, and they were about ready to record their record, Crusader. We were so stoked to meet them, and they couldn't have been cooler. They said, take a few days, finish your stuff. We'll look around LA. We've always wanted to just take a couple of days here. So it worked out for everybody. And the coolest thing was they put all their gear in the big room, and they had purple Marshalls. Can't make it up, folks. Purple Marshalls. Never saw that before. The best story to describe Chris Minto, an engineer who had worked with Keith Olsen, he did the Babies records and Pat Benatar and various things, so we thought, how could he screw this up? Is when we told Don, Nick's father, that we were having problems in the studio, he said, well, let me come in and take a listen, and I'll see what you guys are hearing and see if I agree with you. And we said, oh, that would be great, man. Thanks. Now, Don's been in a lot of studios doing a lot of sessions for every act you could name. Rock, jazz, you name it, he's done it. He comes in, sits quietly in the back. He listens to Chris working. We do a couple of mixes, listen back. And he kind of rises up and he kind of looks at us like, follow me. And we follow him out of the room. And we get outside. And Nick's very anxious, and he says, well, Dad, what do you think? And he goes, Chris, he has perfect ears. No holes. So, Nick wanted to laugh at that, and it's funny now, but back then we were pretty depressed. And Don just said, look, you guys, just take it easy, do the best you can with it. This is a good opportunity for you. It's your first album. Get through it. There's going to be some more records. And he sure was right. Well, we progressed on with Chris and Freddie in the studio over at Sound City, and thank God the studio naturally sounded good. And we made a pretty good record, and we were satisfied with it for the time being, and it got released in Europe right away. However, at the same time, Pernod Liquor Company out of France, a big liquor company there, wanted to sponsor us on a tour of Europe. And we thought, okay, if we can get it going in Europe, maybe we can bring that home. So we, of course, agreed, and they paid for some rehearsal space at this giant warehouse rehearsal, and they set up like 20 lasers all around us and reflective mirrors, and it was just crazy. And we had full lights, we had two 24-track boards. We were going to go on tour of Europe, and this was the warm-up, and we were going to take the lasers too. It was a big deal.
Porte bien, voici un nouveau groupe, Rhodes, qui vient juste de sortir son premier album et déjà se vend en France. Vous allez...
It's sound, it's visuals, it's entertainment. It's a total entertainment package. It's all rock and roll to me.
See that all that you do is in vain. Every
Freddie managed to screw that up, like he did everything else. Some fellow went over to Europe to represent the band, and he said he was our manager. We never even knew the guy. And he also had 2 other bands, and if you didn't take the 2 other bands, Rhodes wasn't going to come over for the tour. Well, this kind of pissed off the guys over there. They thought they were being strong-armed to put these other bands on. They said no, and the whole thing was off. So Freddie ended up spending a lot of money on us, and we kept wondering, where is this guy getting the money? And then finally the money's shut down, and all of a sudden Freddie's out of money and looking around to borrow it from everyone, and we're like, what? Well, we figured it out, and he had to eventually show us some paperwork showing he had some investors in Germany that were feeding him money to pay for all the sessions. It turns out this company made parts for the space shuttle, which is one of the reasons we had a fake space shuttle on the cover of our record. Things were coming into view, and we were wondering why Freddie was so hot on that idea. They ended up spending almost $300,000 on us with all the time at Sound City, the record design, the manufacturing, this and that and the other thing. So by the time we shipped the first 25,000 records, there was no money to make any more. And it got released in Europe. They sold all those and we couldn't ship anymore.
We're in Germany. The people that were sponsoring us, they kept reminding us, no drugs. Don't do any drugs over there. Don't get any drugs, don't look for any drugs, and don't do any drugs. Three o'clock in the morning, I get this knock at my door. Well, I'm jet lagged. It was Nick. He had a plate, and then he had a drinking glass on the plate, upside down. And inside, he had a nice ball of hash. And we smoked that and watched the sun come up the next morning.